Right, with number 3, having a square root in there makes it more complicated. Not only can we not have the denominator be 0, just like any other problem, but with a square root, what cannot happen under a square root? Negative, right? We can't have a negative under there. So technically now, if we look at this 1 minus x squared, that cannot be 0, and it cannot be negative. So that means it has to be greater than 0. Right? 1 minus x squared has to be greater than 0. So we're going to solve this for x. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. Opposite of x squared is going to be greater than negative 1. Then we're going to divide by negative. What do we need to remember when we divide by a negative? Flip the sign, right? So we get x squared is less than 1. And so we have x squared is less than 1. Now, to solve this, we need to take the square root of both sides. And if this were just an equation, we need to remember positive or negative. We get x equals positive or negative 1. But it doesn't make any sense to have, and don't write this part yet, but x is less than positive or negative 1. That's not going to work with an inequality, having both of those signs in one inequality. So we actually have to kind of split this up. We're still going to have positive 1 and negative 1, but we can't have the same sign for both. Well, for the positive one, the sign is going to stay the same here. For the negative one, it's kind of like when we divided by negative 1 up here. We had to flip the sign. All right, so we have to flip the sign for a negative number here. So we're going to get x is greater than negative 1. Well, here, with two inequalities, we can either combine them into one if it works, or we're going to have two separate ones that are kind of going in opposite directions. One easy way to kind of look at that is look at a number line. Go back to algebra. Here, this says x is going to be less than 1, so we'd have an open dot here and shade to the left. This one says x is greater than negative 1, so we'd have an open dot here and shade to the right. So really, our inequality is everything between these two. So we can write this as one combined inequality. X has to be greater than negative 1, but less than 1. Sometimes you might have it the opposite way, where we have one going to the right here, one going to the left, and we have two separate inequalities. We just keep them separate. But here, in this case, those are combined. That's an and inequality. So this problem, it's continuous on the interval from negative 1 to 1.